Barbara Williams lived the kind of life many could only dream of. Young, beautiful, and married to a man who adored her. Their home was nestled in the sunny suburbs of California, surrounded by friendly neighbors and quiet streets. But behind that perfect facade, something sinister was brewing. Barbara had a secret that would soon unravel her life, leading to a brutal murder that would shock the entire neighborhood. This is the story of Barbara's affair with her neighbor, David. Barbara Williams was 25 years old, married to Tom for 3 years. They were what many would call the perfect couple. Tom worked as a successful real estate agent, and Barbara stayed at home, managing their life and making their house a home. But something was missing from Barbara's life. What others saw as a perfect marriage was, in reality, a relationship filled with cracks. Tom was often busy with work, and over time he grew distant. Barbara found herself feeling alone in a beautiful house with no one to talk to. And that's when David entered the picture. David was Barbara's neighbor, charming, attentive, and always around when she needed a friendly face. What started as innocent small talk over the fence would soon spiral into something much darker. At first, it was harmless. Barbara would chat with David while Tom was at work, sharing stories, laughing at jokes. But soon, those conversations became more frequent, more personal. And then one day, it went too far. Their affair began in secret. Stolen moments at a local motel, hidden messages on their phones. To Barbara, David was everything Tom wasn't. He made her feel alive, wanted. But what Barbara didn't realize was that this affair would soon lead her down a path of no return. Meanwhile, Tom had secrets of his own. On the surface, he was the perfect husband, hardworking, successful, and dedicated to providing for his wife. But underneath, Tom was far from ordinary. Because Tom wasn't just a real estate agent. He was something much darker, something far more dangerous. For years, Tom had led a double life. By day, he was a loving husband and successful businessman. But by night, he hunted women, luring them into situations they couldn't escape, and then brutally ending their lives. No one had ever suspected him. He was careful, methodical, until now. Barbara thought her affair with David was a well-kept secret. She believed she had covered her tracks, deleting messages, sneaking out when Tom wasn't home. But Tom had noticed. He always noticed Tom was no stranger to deception. And soon he began piecing together the clues. Late-night texts, unexplained absences, the way Barbara seemed distant. But instead of confronting her, Tom stayed silent. He waited. He had a plan of his own, because Tom wasn't just a jealous husband. He was a killer, and he was about to make Barbara pay the ultimate price. It was a night like any other. Barbara was meeting David at their usual spot, a secluded motel on the outskirts of town. She didn't know it yet, but this would be the last time she ever saw him. Barbara and David are lying in bed together, talking softly. Suddenly, there's a loud knock on the door. They both freeze.
Did you tell anyone we were meeting here?
No, I thought you were alone.
Barbara gets out of bed, wrapping a robe around herself. She cautiously approaches the door, her heart pounding as she opens it, revealing Tom standing in the doorway.
Did you really think I didn't know?
David lunges at Tom, but Tom dodges effortlessly, slashing at him with the knife. Blood splatters across the wall as David collapses to the floor, gasping for breath.
No, please stop here.
You're next.
Barbara's screams echo through the motel, and suddenly staff arrived. But it was too late. The motel manager called the police, and when he come, officers swarmed the scene, taping off the area as they examined the gruesome murder inside. When the police arrived at the motel, they found a bloodbath. David was dead, brutally stabbed multiple times. Barbara was lying next to him, her throat slit. There was no sign of Tom. Tom had disappeared into the night, leaving behind nothing but a trail of blood. But the police soon discovered the truth behind his disappearance. The detectives quickly identified the victims: David, the charming neighbor, and Barbara, the beautiful young woman whose life had taken a tragic turn. But what they didn't know was the dark truth that lay beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic lives. Back at the precinct, the investigation began. The detectives reviewed Barbara's life, trying to piece together the events leading to that fateful night. They discovered her affair with David, but also learned of her husband, Tom, whose name quickly rose to the top of their suspect list. As the detectives dug deeper into Tom's life, they found a disturbing pattern. The man they thought was a loving husband had a much darker past, one that involved multiple unsolved murders of women, all strikingly similar to Barbara's death. The search for Tom became a priority. With every lead they followed, the evidence mounted against him. Friends described him as distant and secretive, often disappearing for days at a time. His alibi for the night of the murder was shaky at best. Meanwhile, Tom was hiding in the shadows, knowing that the walls were closing in on him. His mind was racing, trying to figure out how to escape the consequences of his actions. The thrill of killing Barbara and David now turned into a nightmarish reality he could not escape. Desperation drove him to reach out to an ally from his past, someone who had helped him evade the law before. But this was no ordinary accomplice. This was a dangerous game of cat and mouse where trust could easily turn into betrayal. In a clandestine meeting, Tom and his ally plotted their next move. As they whispered in the darkness, the night air thickened with tension, a foreboding sense of danger lingering like a storm cloud. Tom's desperation drove him to desperate measures, and he knew he couldn't go back. Not now, not ever. Meanwhile, the detectives received an anonymous tip about Tom's whereabouts. The walls were finally closing in, and the game was about to reach its horrifying conclusion. In a matter of minutes, law enforcement surrounded the building where Tom was hiding. As the officers stormed inside, they were met with the chilling sight of a man consumed by his own madness. Faced with the reality of his actions, Tom became a cornered animal. The fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, but he had nowhere to run. The game was over. With Tom in custody, the detectives could finally breathe a sigh of relief of